The fire didn't start the war, but it sure ended it. Before Karen tried to burn my workshop to the ground, she spent weeks trying to get the HOA to declare it illegal. She wasn't just another nosy neighbor, she was a tyrant with a clipboard. You could smell her entitlement before you even saw her. She'd march around the neighborhood like she was running for sheriff, always ready to tattle on anyone not bending to her rulebook. And me? I was her latest project. It all started when I converted part of my backyard into a small workshop. Nothing crazy, just a space where I could work on electronics and unwind after long days. The HOA rules didn't say a damn thing about it, but Karen? She saw it as an affront to her so-called authority. The first time she came by, she smiled that fake, too wide smile. "Just checking in on that little building of yours," she chirped. "I'm sure you've read the guidelines about property aesthetics." I told her I had. Twice. She didn't like that. 2 days later, I got my first complaint letter. Unapproved structure violating neighborhood harmony. Karen's words, not the HOA's. They sent it along because she forced them to. I attended the next HOA meeting to settle it in person. Karen stood there, rattling off her grievances like a prosecutor in court. I calmly laid out my case, documents and all. My workshop was within regulations, size, placement, even the paint matched my house. The board, to their credit, agreed. Karen didn't. She stormed out before the meeting ended, muttering something about keeping the neighborhood safe. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next week, she was back, this time with a tape measure. She strutted into my yard like she owned it, stretching her tool along the fence line, measuring the distance to the street, muttering numbers under her breath. I told her to get off my property. She laughed. "I'm just doing what the HOA should have done." After that, it escalated. She'd watched me from across the street, standing behind her bushes with binoculars. I caught her once, snapping photos with her phone, trying to be subtle. She started pestering other neighbors, warning them about the dangerous setup I had. Some ignored her. Others gave me sideways glances. That's how Karen worked, wear them down, one whisper at a time. Then came the flyers. Karen printed up warnings, slipped them into mailboxes, anonymous, of course. Unsafe structure endangering our homes. Take action before it's too late. She never signed them, but everyone knew. Her perfume was all over those papers. I brought one to the HOA president. He sighed, told me to ignore her, that she was harmless. Harmless. A week later, she tried to break into the workshop. I wasn't home at the time, but my cameras were. The footage showed her creeping around the side gate, fumbling with the lock. She didn't get in, but she left her mark. A smear of dirt on the door, a bent latch. I called the police, filed a report. They visited her, gave her a warning, and left. She stood in her driveway as they drove off, smiling like she'd won. I knew then this wasn't going to stop. Not until she made it stop. But what Karen didn't know, what she could never have imagined, was that someone else was watching too. Not just me. Not just the neighbors she'd poisoned with paranoia. No, Karen had stepped into something far bigger than her petty vendetta. And the workshop she hated so much? It wasn't just for electronics anymore. It started about a month before all this mess. A knock at my door, 2 men in plain clothes, badges tucked into their belts. They introduced themselves, federal agents. They'd been tracking a suspect, someone believed to be hiding out nearby, and needed a base of operations, something discreet. My workshop fit the bill. They didn't force it. They asked? Promised it was low risk, all quiet observation. I agreed. I had my reasons. So when Karen ramped up her crusade, I kept quiet. I didn't tell her. I didn't warn her. I watched. The agents set up equipment inside. Cameras, mics, the works. Karen never knew how close she was to being caught. Every time she ranted outside, every time she crept near my yard, they recorded it all. Her voice, her threats. Everything. Still, I never thought she'd go as far as she did. It was after another HOA meeting, Her motion to ban all backyard structures had failed spectacularly. I saw her pacing in her driveway, phone to her ear, her voice low but sharp. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. Something had snapped. That night, I heard footsteps outside. The workshop lights flickered. Then the smell, gasoline. I didn't move. The agents had told me to stay out of it if something went down. So I waited. And watched. Flames licked at the base of the workshop, catching slow. Not enough to burn fast. Karen didn't know how to set a proper fire. But enough to get attention. Sirens were already coming, someone had called. Karen was standing back, watching, thinking she'd won. That's when they arrived. No sirens, no flashing lights. Just black cars, doors swinging open, agents moving fast. They didn't hesitate. Karen froze, mouth open, as they grabbed her, cuffed her hands behind her back. She screamed. "What are you doing?" I was stopping him. I was protecting this neighborhood. They didn't answer. They didn't need to. She wasn't just a Karen anymore. She was a suspect. Karen screamed as they dragged her across the lawn, but no one came to her aid. The neighbors she once ruled over stood in silence, watching from behind half-closed curtains and shadowed porches. The workshop smoldered, fire crews dousing what little flame had managed to take hold. The FBI didn't waste time explaining. They didn't need to. Karen's face twisted from confusion to outrage, but deep down, I think she knew. She had crossed the line, and now she was in over her head. I stood back, hands in my pockets, as they cuffed her and read her rights. The agent I'd worked with, a tall man with a voice like gravel, gave me a nod. "Thanks for your cooperation. We've got what we need." "What happens now?" I asked. "We take her in. But this isn't just about your workshop anymore. She's tangled up in something bigger." Bigger. That word hung in the air. Karen's shrill voice cut through the night. "This is a mistake. I didn't do anything wrong. He's the one you should be arresting." She wasn't wrong about me being involved, but not the way she thought. Weeks ago, when the agents approached me, I knew saying yes would bring trouble. They needed a location to monitor a man tied to organized crime, someone who slipped through their fingers and was now believed to be laying low in my neighborhood. They didn't tell me who at first, just that the surveillance needed to be airtight. My workshop became their eye, and Karen's obsession gave them more footage than they'd hoped for. As they loaded her into the car, I could see the panic starting to sink in. She realized this wasn't a slap on the wrist, not a warning or a fine. She wasn't going home tonight. Later, one of the agents pulled me aside. "We need to ask you a few things. Off the record." I nodded, following him toward one of the black vehicles. He opened the door, leaned against the frame. "We think she's working with someone. The arson attempt was too sloppy. But someone knew exactly when to strike, when we'd be shifting the surveillance inside for maintenance." I frowned. "You think she's not acting alone?" He shook his head. "We don't think. We know." The next morning, word spread fast. Karen was in custody. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Some neighbors looked relieved, others nervous. But no one knew the full story yet. The fire was all over local news. Attempted arson in quiet suburb. But the federal angle hadn't leaked. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, when I saw a familiar face. Mr. Thompson. He lived 2 houses down, kept to himself mostly, but was always the first to back Karen up during meetings. He gave me a tight smile, a nod, then disappeared inside. Something about it felt off. Later that day, the agents returned. They wanted to dig deeper, search Karen's house, check her communications. They brought me in to listen. What I heard made my blood run cold. Recordings. Dozens of them. Karen talking on the phone, late at night, to someone she called T. She spoke about the workshop, about needing it gone, about making sure nothing could be traced back to her. But what stood out was the mention of old debts, of someone promising her help in exchange for silence about what happened before. The agents paused the recording. "You know who T is?" I didn't answer right away, but my mind went back to Thompson, always standing just behind her, nodding, whispering advice. They didn't need more. They had enough. Within hours, they had a warrant. Thompson's house was raided just after sunset. He didn't resist. He didn't have time. Inside, they found stacks of cash, documents linking him to Karen's ex-husband, and more importantly, plans, blueprints of the neighborhood, notes about surveillance patterns, and a burner phone filled with coded messages. Karen wasn't just a nuisance. She was part of a cover-up, tied to fraud that went back years. Her ex-husband had run scams, laundering money through small businesses, disappearing when the heat got too close. Karen stayed behind, keeping her head low, until the workshop made her nervous. Until she thought someone might be watching again. She was right. That night, as they hauled Thompson away, one of the agents turned to me. "It's funny, isn't it?" She thought she was in control the whole time. I didn't laugh. I just watched as Thompson avoided my eyes, shuffling past in cuffs. The neighborhood didn't sleep easy. Some neighbors whispered about the FBI cars, others locked their doors tighter, wondering who else might be hiding secrets. Karen's voice echoed in my mind. I was protecting this neighborhood. She thought she was the hero. But all she did was expose herself. Karen sat in that cold interrogation room for hours before she realized no one was coming to save her. She was used to being the one with the answers, the one calling the shots. But now she was just another suspect waiting for a deal that wasn't coming. The agents didn't yell. They didn't have to. They played her own voice back to her, calm, confident, incriminating. The conversations she thought were private, the threats she thought no one heard. Every word was there, recorded, time-stamped, undeniable. She folded fast. Karen wasn't built for pressure. She broke down halfway through the first tape. Crying, swearing she didn't know what she was getting into, blaming Thompson, her ex-husband, the HOA, even me. Anyone but herself. But the feds weren't after just her. They wanted more, and they were convinced she could give it to them. Meanwhile, the neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. The HOA tried to keep things quiet, but you can't hide this kind of chaos behind trimmed hedges and white picket fences. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said Karen was a spy. Others claimed I was part of some underground operation. But the truth was simpler and darker. I got the call 2 days later. They wanted me back at the station. Not as a suspect, but to identify someone. They showed me a series of photos, old surveillance stills, people I didn't recognize. Then they stopped on one. Karen, sitting in a cafe, talking to a man with a scar along his jawline. "Recognize him?" the agent asked. I shook my head. That's her ex thought to be dead. Faked his own death 3 years ago. Fraud, embezzlement, arson. We think he's back. That was the moment it clicked. Karen wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting him. The workshop wasn't a threat to her authority, it was a threat to her entire life. Everything she'd built on lies and shadows was at risk. She wasn't just a nuisance anymore. She was dangerous. The FBI had her, but they wanted him. They needed leverage. That's when they turned to me. "She'll talk to you," the agent said. "You're part of why this started. Maybe you can get her to tell us where he is." I didn't want to. I didn't owe Karen anything. But I agreed. They let me into the room, sat me across from her. She looked smaller now. Not the loud, proud neighbor who used to storm across my lawn. Just a woman cornered, scared, out of options. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice cracked. "I want to know why," I said. "Why burn down my workshop? Why all of it?" She looked away, hands shaking. "You don't understand. You never did." "Then explain it." She laughed, bitter and hollow. "It was never about you. It was about him. I kept him safe all these years. No one knew. No one could know. Then you brought them here. You let them into our lives." I leaned in. "Where is he, Karen?" Silence. "They're going to charge you with everything," I said. "Unless you give them something." Her eyes met mine, desperate. If I tell them, he'll kill me. They'll protect you. They can't. The agents watched from behind the glass, waiting. Karen hesitated, then nodded slowly. There's a cabin. Up north. He's hiding there. That was all they needed. By the next morning, they were gone, chasing the lead. Karen was transferred to a secure location, her fate tied to whether they caught him. The neighborhood settled back into uneasy silence, but nothing was the same. People crossed the street to avoid each other now. Conversations were short, eyes darting. Trust had cracked. I stayed out of the meetings. Let them figure it out on their own. I didn't need to be the center of attention anymore. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. Then I found the letter. Stuffed in my mailbox, no stamp, no return address. Just my name in jagged handwriting. Inside, one sentence. You should have left it alone. No signature. But I didn't need one. I read the letter twice, then burned it. There wasn't a question of who sent it, only when they'd come back to collect on the warning. The FBI was still out there, chasing Karen's ex through backroads and dead ends, but here I was, left behind with the fallout. Karen was gone, Thompson locked up, but their poison had soaked into every corner of the neighborhood. I couldn't walk down the street without feeling eyes on me, without hearing whispers drop to silence as I passed. The HOA tried to pretend everything was normal. New meetings, fresh flowers at the entrance, cheerful emails about community events. But no one cared about potlucks and yard sales anymore. They wanted answers no one could give them. How long had the workshop been under surveillance? Were there others involved? Would the FBI be back? And through it all, Karen's name hung in the air like smoke, unspoken, but thick and choking. I thought about leaving. Selling the house, starting fresh somewhere they hadn't heard of me, where my neighbors didn't flinch when I looked their way. But the thought of running didn't sit right. I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd helped, cooperated, played by the rules. Karen had made her choices. So had Thompson. And her ex? He was still out there, but that wasn't my fight anymore. Then came the news. They found him. The FBI raided the cabin, just like Karen said, but he wasn't there alone. 2 others were with him, names the agents wouldn't release, only that the operation had gone deeper than expected. There had been more than fraud, more than money. The fire Karen set wasn't just meant to destroy evidence. It was meant to send a signal, to tell him to run. She didn't just fail to protect him. She exposed him. Karen's deal was dead. With her ex in custody, her leverage vanished. She'd served time, a lot of it. The agents didn't say how long, but long enough. I didn't feel relief, just a kind of numbness. Like the storm had passed but left everything cracked and hollow. I went back to the workshop. What was left of it? The agents had taken their equipment, the fire had gutted the rest. Charred wood, melted wires, the shell of what used to be mine. I stood there a long time, not really thinking, just staring at the ruins. I could rebuild it, I thought. Start over. But why? The neighborhood kept its distance. No one came to ask what happened. No one offered help. I didn't blame them. We were all just trying to forget. A week later, I saw a moving truck at Thompson's house. His family, packing up what they could, disappearing without a word. Another empty lot, another ghost of what had been. The street looked different now. Quieter. Like the soul had been drained out of it. The next HOA meeting was thin. Half the chairs empty. The president stood up, cleared his throat, and announced that Karen's position on the board was permanently vacated. No one cheered. No one clapped. They just nodded, some relief, some shame. A motion passed to review security, to set boundaries on personal investigations. Rules written in reaction to what we all let happen. After the meeting, I walked home alone. The sky was overcast, the air heavy with a coming storm. As I reached my door, I saw something stuck in the frame. Another letter. No handwriting this time, just a printed note. Some things don't stay buried. I tore it up without reading further. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the streetlights flicker. No cars passed, no sounds but the wind. I didn't know if it was over. Maybe it never would be. Karen had started something, but she wasn't the only one with secrets. Maybe this place was always waiting to crack open. The FBI didn't come back. No more calls, no more questions. They had what they needed, and they moved on. But I stayed. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Someone had to see what came next. Sometimes I still hear her voice, sharp and accusing, shouting about protecting the neighborhood. About keeping it safe. But all she did was tear it apart. I didn't fix the workshop. I let it stand, blackened and broken, a reminder to anyone who passed by. This is what happens when control turns to obsession. When fear becomes fire. And when people watch, but don't see.